let's move on to OPIN, the Operations and Infrastructure Standards. Anything particular jump out as from the perspective of our pharmacy clients and prospective applicants?
Sure. Yeah, I'll share some of the new verbiage and changes first, and then I'll go through some of the concepts that have been removed. One of the first standards is talking about your policies and procedures and maintenance, and there's just a little bit of updated verbiage with how you're going to keep track of these. You now need to keep a record of all revision dates, all effective dates, and all review dates. So not just the last dates, but the history of all your policies. So just making sure you're keeping that record.
What was interesting to me about this revision is that if you go back 2 versions to the Farm Core standards that were a part of specialty pharmacy in the 2 or 3-point era, there was a requirement that you record the date of the last revision, and then that went away. Any reference to revision went away in version 4.0, and so URAC has restored that requirement for revision, but as you said accurately, all revision dates, so the entire history of revisions, not just the most recent, now must be recorded. So that was kind of an interesting little historical factoid there, but please go ahead.
Yep. So the next just small change is regarding the staff training. There's just a little bit of revised language in the ongoing training. So just making sure that you're targeting your ongoing training to maintain job knowledge related to the assigned roles and responsibilities. So
yeah, that was the previous language since the beginning of time, it seems, has been around professional competence. And it seems to me that what URAC is doing here is saying general professional competence is not what URAC's interested in. We want to make sure that your ongoing training is about how to do this job better, not how to do some ancillary other part of your professional life better. So that seems notable. Particularly as we think about the kind of continuing education that's historically has been appropriate evidence for this, may not be appropriate anymore. It has to relate to this specific job.
Yep. Great. And then probably the biggest change and biggest new concept for the OPIN standards is regarding employee diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this is a brand new standard, new language that you may not be familiar with in URAC now. So URAC does define those terms, and they give you a couple of ideas of how you can promote employee diversity, equity, inclusion, but you do have quite a bit of flexibility to decide, what's going to work best for your organization and how you want to implement that.
Yeah, from the perspective, it's good to put this in the context generally of brand new concepts. I think we first saw this standard in another program about a year and a half ago. And so even to URAC, the whole DEI area for both employees and consumers is new. And so it's my belief, based on my quarter of a century in the land of URAC, that URAC reviewers and the Standards Committee will be watching closely what applicants for URAC accreditation do with this standard in order to better understand how they will interpret it going forward. So you do have a good bit of flexibility because the standard's new.
Yep. So those are really the main new topics and big changes in the OPIN focus area. But I did want to go over some of the concepts that have been removed or changed in that way. So the first one I was going to mention was regarding pharmacies being held accountable for complying with their own policies. So I'll maybe let Tom speak to this one since you have a little bit more experience.
This is this has long been kind of an interesting issue. It never was an issue. Originally was a part of any URAC standard. But what happened, gosh, a dozen years ago, it seems, was that a reviewer interpretation became lodged in the formal URAC interpretation that essentially bootstrapped point value elements into mandatory status if you missed enough of them. It was kind of an anomaly in URAC's history for the last dozen years. So this is really a return to the way things were, at least in my mind and the mind of our colleagues, before that kind of anomalous change that got codified out of a kind of a strange set of circumstances. So this is essentially what is old is new and new is old. This is a return to the way things were probably 15 or more years ago. So.
Yep. And to clarify, you still need to adhere to your own policies, but non-adherence will basically get you out of compliance with that specific standard that the policy is related to, but it won't necessarily refer back to this OPIN standard and make you out of compliance with that one regarding following your own policies.
That was by many of us considered to be a double jeopardy kind of thing. You violate one policy and standard over here, and then that you've automatically violated another mandatory element over here, and that just seemed kind of wrong. And I don't think the standards committee ever intended to do that. So please go ahead.
All right, so the next concept, just a kind of a slight change to this one, but regarding the job descriptions for staff qualifications, the concept has technically been removed, but still consider that some job roles like the compliance officer and clinical staff still need to have a job description. Just it may be listed in other standards that they need to have that, or you'll need to have that to show that they're meeting the qualifications and things like that. So it's no longer a universal requirement, but many staff will probably still have a job description.
Yeah, and frankly, reviews have focused on clinical staff anyway. And so from the URAC perspective, this is a very minor change worth noting, but I don't think it necessarily suggests that our pharmacy clients will want to be changing their policies about job descriptions. Still probably a good idea to have them. Sure.
Yep. Another concept that was slightly changed and removed is just regarding some of the staff training requirements. The previous version just listed certain things that staff were required to have training on: ethics in healthcare, code of conduct, URAC standards. And then now with the new standards, some of those specifics have been removed. So even regarding like policy and procedure training in the OPIN standards, it's been removed, but technically you still need to disseminate and train them on the new and updated PNPs per another standard. So just kind of keeping that in mind. Another thing that was removed is just in general, the staff member performance reviews. So no longer mentioned at all. And I think that's it for the OPIN standards.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you so much for that.